Hello Year 8 and welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to be looking at the European Witchcraze. Now let's start off with a definition. What do we mean by Witchcraze? Well, the Witchcraze was a phenomenon that took place between about 1500 and 1700. It took place all across Europe. In Germany, what was known as the Holy Roman Empire, in France, in Scotland, in the Netherlands, all across the region. So this was a European-wide thing. And in this period, lots of women were accused of being witches. They were put on trial and executed for their crimes. Maybe 50,000 women died this way, although some historians have said it was much more than that. So, how could you spot a witch in 1600? I'd like you now to take a moment to jot down some ideas. What do you think would be the signs of a witch? Well, in 1600 they'd be looking for these things. They'd be looking for a visible mark on a body. Maybe you've got a birthmark, a wart, a mole. They believed these were the witch's marks, and you would use these to feed your familiar. Now, a familiar is basically a witch's pet. So they could be any kind of animal. It might be a dog, a frog, or of course, a cat. Now, these would be fed by the witch. They would suck on the witch's blood and leave that visible mark. The familiar might do the bidding of the witch, so they might go out and cause havoc or disease things or whatever. A witch would also be expected to be absent from church. They wouldn't follow the normal rules of society, so they wouldn't do things like go to church like would have been expected of them. A lot of the time, the women who were accused of witchcraft were older women. Men weren't generally targeted. Sometimes they were targeted, especially in areas like Estonia, but probably about 90% of the victims were women. And it's very noticeable that these were often old women. Not really young people, but more people kind of 40, 50 and onwards. People who'd had kids, grown up, and were now aged. Some younger women, of course, were, but general rule, if you're an old woman with a cat, you should feel a bit worried. Witches were often those in society who were a bit unusual, a bit isolated. Maybe they acted in strange ways, muttered, talked gibberish, just weren't very neighbourly, not very sociable. And sometimes this could be taken as signs that they were casting evil spells or evil eyes on people. Now, obviously, today, if we saw a woman with a dog who was over 50, we wouldn't immediately go, witch, witch, witch. So why did people in 1600 believe in witchcraft? Well, we've got three key things here. Have a guess what they could be from those clues. Well, firstly, we've got the role of religion. Religion taught that just as God was real and directly intervened in people's lives, so the devil was real. And he had agents out in the world, witches who would do his bidding. Secondly, there were lots of natural phenomena that people in 1600 couldn't explain. They couldn't explain why diseases happened, why there was sudden drought, why a cow suddenly fell ill. And so they tried to use witchcraft to understand the world around them. When something bad happened or something unexplainable happened, they would say, it must be the work of a witch. And this is linked to the third reason here. They couldn't explain these things because they didn't have science. Science as we know it today comes from 1700, 1800. Rational explanations were not available to these people, so they explained with what they could. So why was it that women were so predominantly the victims? Why were they the ones who always got accused? Again, we've got 4 images to help you here. Can you think of 4 reasons connected to these images why women might be the accused? Well, firstly, we've got the role of religion again. The Bible said that women were sinful. This goes all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve. Eve eating that apple, sorry. It's this idea that women will fall easily prey to the devil. Secondly, we've got the roles that women actually did. In 1600, women were often the healers at home, making herbal remedies. They were the midwives, helping women give birth. They were the cooks in the family home, preparing the meals. That meant if something bad happened, for example, someone came ill after eating a meal, or a baby died during childbirth, the blame would fall on the women who were doing the jobs around them. Because those jobs were predominantly done by women, it was predominantly women who then got accused. We also have the fact that women in this period had a lot less power and wealth. They were the poorest members of society, particularly if you were an older woman, for example, a widow. Men were the breadwinners, the ones who made the money. So if you lacked a man to look after you, you might easily fall into poverty. Now, those in poverty might be seen as a burden upon their local neighbourhood, and the neighbourhood might want to get rid of them, and so they might accuse them as witches. One common stereotype of the witch that occurs a lot in the witch records is a woman going and asking for charity, asking for some money and help, being refused by someone, and then that person soon after falling sick. The woman who'd asked for charity and been refused would then be accused of witchcraft, using it as revenge for not being helped. Of course, if that was the main reason that people got accused, the fact that women were the poorest members of society meant they got accused more. Finally, we have just the basic 17th century understanding of women as weaker beings. Irrational, unable to use their brains, unable to resist the devil. These are the reasons why it was very often women who became the victims of this witch hunt. The final thing you're going to be doing today is you're going to be looking in depth at the case study of the Pendle witches, which is a very famous British witch hunt story. So it takes place in Lancashire, and you're going to watch some clips on it. And then I'd like you to do these 3 tasks. As you watch the documentary, answer the accompanying questions. Then sort the boxes into the correct order to create a summary of the trials. And lastly, write a short statement of what caused the Pendle trials.